Happy New Year, Bon Ami, Felice Año Nuevo for John. It is very exciting to greet you all for the very first episode of GLI Live for this new year. I am Donna Cryer, CEO of the Global Liver Institute and your host. I have with me today a guest I'm so excited to be able to start the new year with, Professor Thomas Berg, who is on the EASL governing board. He is vice secretary for the European Association for the Study of Liver Diseases governing board, the esteemed medical society leading hepatology in Europe. He's also professor of medicine at the University of Leipzig. And Dr. Berg, welcome.
Welcome to you, Donna. It's great to be here. Thanks a lot, and a happy new year to all of you listening to this session.
Thank you. So for those of you who participated in our first season, you know that we covered a wider range of topics that came to us from liver patients, liver transplant recipients, those with cancer, autoimmune diseases, but also increasingly people just interested in knowing more about the liver health, particularly as affected by COVID. Our audience, with our guests ranging from those in Ethiopia to Brazil to California, which to those of us on the East Coast of the United States often seems like a different country, most beloved though. Our listenership and our viewership, we recognize, spans the entire globe. So I'm so excited that we are starting with discussions of the experiences in 2020 and what we can look forward to in 2021 in Europe. So Professor Berg, as our first question, what has been the effect of COVID-19 on the European liver community?
Well, thanks, Donna. And I think as for all of us, it instantly changed the way we are living as a scientific community, as we work together. How do we communicate? But I think there are really two dimensions in your question. I think the one is really how does it was the effect on our, let's say, liver society, the researchers, our medical societies like the EASL, the European Association for the Study of the Liver, and on the other hand, how to take care of our patients in a pandemic where some of the hospitals were really highly affected, and to take care that the standard measures and procedures and standard management will be maintained for our patient. So probably when I can come first to the scientific part, I think I felt personally that this necessity could be also the mother of invention, as there's the saying. And I really tried, and we as EASL tried to make really the best of it. To think from the scratch, what can we done better? What does it tell us? And to be honest, I'm quite happy with what could be achieved and what we have explored with all the digital offers we could give. And our first digital liver meeting, I think it was a success. You reach a much broader audience, and had also the impression that it's increased democracy also for meetings, because people are more involved in asking questions as you are sitting in an audience, and then you have to stand up, go to the microphone and ask something. But here you can just write in your computer. So my guess was we have many more questions, more discussions around the topics. And this is certainly something we learned, which is a good thing, and think many of these things we will maintain also for the future. Sorry, please.
Thank you to interrupt a bit. I just wanted to underscore that certainly as a patient who has participated in scientific conferences for many years, it was a very positive experience for me, twofold. One, I certainly saw more science than I have across many years since I wasn't running through the halls, talking to people. Though I miss that connection, but I certainly saw a lot of science, and yes, the time to formulate questions or to see an increased number of questions was really fantastic, and to have those sessions preserved in a way and to be able to go back and look at them at different times was so useful. But also, as a person who often, still living with multiple chronic diseases and the toll that travel can sometimes take, I didn't have to reserve a week to recover. And so there were so many people and so many patients who aren't well enough to travel in the first place. And it was their first time having access to that information. And so it really, to your point, did democratize the meeting and the information in a very positive way. And whether it's digital meetings moving forward or hybrids, or regional or other ways of using that technology, I think that's definitely something that we want to see and support moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I think that's a very important feedback. I'm very grateful to hear. And this is exactly what EDEL is considering, that we can't go back to the old times after this experience, and also the very positive feedback coming from around the world. So the future will be most likely a hybrid format where you can join remotely if you like, or if you really are interested also to meet people in person. And because this is still quite important and we all miss it, because inspiration and creativity also comes from the unexpected, meeting people you never supposed to meet. Mm-hmm. And then you're in a discussion and learn something new. So this is also what we realized. You can plan projects with people you know for many years. You're already working together, and then you can have a brief video conference to do it. But there's no surprise anymore, And this is what happened during these meetings, where the inspiration comes from. Yeah.
I think that is fantastic. Another thing that you pointed out that I think would be a positive takeaway. It was truly remarkable and just a really wonderful and reassuring way how quickly the gastroenterology and hepatology medical societies did come together to provide information for patients around how COVID would affect us, and continue to evolve that information. This was certainly novel for all of us, and liver patients are so complex, and so the questions we have were really complex. And so maybe take us up to date a little bit about what is the risk of COVID as we understand it now, having gone through several months, for liver patients, and the risk is different for different types of liver patients, absolutely. Both of contracting the infection and also of having a more serious course of disease.
Yeah, and this is also impressive to see, and hopefully a positive effect also for the future, how we have seen how rapidly scientific data and knowledge can be generated in this pandemic, and that led to approval of a vaccine in less than 1 year. This is really amazing. And so we learned also a lot in these very few months, coming from very large data sets and registry about the risk for liver patients. Because of that gets quite clear that all the patients with any chronic disease are afraid of getting the infection, and there's a concern that the risk of acquiring an infection is higher on the one hand. On the other hand, if you're infected, then the disease might be more severe. I have to say the good news for most patients with liver disease is that it looks like that if you have a well-controlled liver disease, let's say a chronic hepatitis B under medical treatment, that then you are not as a special risk. I think we can say that it's quite sure that the risk of getting infected is not higher. And if you are infected, the outcome of the disease is not different from the general population. But if you have a less well-controlled disease or an advanced disease like liver cirrhosis, or when it comes to what we call the decompensation, so when complications occur, this means bleeding, or you have fluid in the abdomen, what we call ascites, then unfortunately the risk of dying because of this infection really rapidly increases. I have to say that these are all data from registries, and these registries are built on data on patient being hospitalized. And this is always a certain subgroup of patients already with more severe disease, because most patients will stay at home with a COVID infection or with the SARS-CoV infection. Yeah.
So is there an opportunity in the future to provide networks from community hospitals, community clinics, patient-generated data? I've had the privilege of being involved in several patient or community organizations putting together, using mobile apps and having an ongoing stream of patient-generated data that could be, if in a common data form, made accessible to augment the type of EHR or inpatient registries that are most commonly used. Are there ways that we could sort of round out that picture and fill in the gaps in data?
Yeah, I think that would be very important to learn more about that and to generate data in this, out of hospital setting. And probably we can work together also with the general practitioners, with the family doctors to get data. And of course, if there will be, not so sure whether we really get the data, and with antibodies it may become difficult. I just thought we could check for antibodies whether a person had the infection, probably even not knowing that he was infected, because it can be asymptomatic, as we all know. Yeah.
So for the questions now that are most on top patients' minds are about the vaccine and about our suitability for the vaccine, recognizing how rigorous, but still how quickly studies were done, and low numbers of patients for very good reasons, of patients with cancer or transplants or autoimmune conditions. So as we are filling in those data and doing those types of trials now, how should patients be, weighing the risks and balances of getting a COVID vaccine? There are several now available depending on country. But should liver patients, transplant recipients, should we be getting the vaccine if they become available to us?
Absolutely. I have to say, there I have a very clear, I'm quite clear-minded and have a very clear opinion that, of course, these patients really need the vaccine. And on the other hand, we know that the efficacy of the vaccine might be influenced by the underlying disease. We know this from all the vaccines, starting from hepatitis B or flu. So the older you are, or if you're a transplant patient with immunosuppression, or you have advanced liver disease or cirrhosis, normally the level of antibodies or response to the vaccine is normally a little bit lower. So we need really urgently to get data, and there are many initiatives out really to gather these data, this information. Well, of course, how it's tolerated, but I wouldn't expect here a lot difference in comparison to the general population, but mainly in terms of efficacy, whether you need more vaccination, whether 2 are enough, or you need a later, we call it booster, so to vaccine again in order to augment the immune response. I think this is really something we have to learn, because it's a vulnerable patient population or a vulnerable population we would like really to protect, and that we have to be sure that the vaccine is also doing the job. With respect to safety, and you mentioned it was all quite quick, I think we really have to understand that the number of people treated in these studies are really huge, and all the regularities were done properly, but they were done in a much more rapid fashion as it done normally because of the urgency of the situation. So instead of having a 6 months time frame for the FDA to approve the drug, they have done it within weeks, And yeah.
It shows the potential of prioritization. Speaking as a lawyer, if we can be on the side of helping moving things forward, rather than slowing them down, we can certainly be a helpful part of the team. I know, and so I certainly do intend to, and having watched. With my husband, who's a physician, watched the FDA hearings, and having been an FDA patient representative for over a decade now, I have great confidence in the process that was pursued, and do intend to take a vaccine as soon as it is offered to me, based on my prioritization, and then I do also intend to enroll in a study for transplant recipients to monitor and collect some data on any side effects or my immune system reaction. So that is available to other transplant recipients, because I think it's a very important part for people from all walks of life and all ethnicities and all countries to be part of this, so that we really understand fully what we have here. So I would encourage other patients to.
Yeah, and we will see quite soon data, and because of this massive vaccination that is now out around the world, so we will get more and more data on that, and also the long-term experience and the long-term safety, which I know is a concern of many patients. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not different from another vaccine.
And so, beyond COVID, what have been the top non-COVID challenges? Our liver diseases didn't stop just because another pandemic came, and so liver cancer rate, NASH continuing, people's autoimmune and rare liver diseases progressing. It was quite sudden for many people that their transplants were canceled, their screenings were canceled, their procedures for different type of bile duct explorations were canceled quite abruptly, and it varied greatly as to whether those were put back on the calendar. And so it seemed to me that being told one day that your disease or condition is life-threatening or very serious and you need to pay attention to it, and the next day saying, well, we're not sure what we're going to do about it for several months, can be quite disconcerting. And so how has Easel and other colleagues in hepatology worked with their health systems to put liver care back online safely, so that we can tend to non-COVID liver health priorities?
Yeah, thanks, Donna. This is really a very important point, and it already bothered me before the COVID crisis that it's so easy to diagnose a chronic liver disease at early stages, but we do see quite often the late stages, and this is true for hepatocellular carcinoma because there's not appropriate surveillance or screening of the high-risk population, and that we see patients for the first time with a decompensated cirrhosis. So, and we know it takes 20, sometimes 30 or 40 years until this stage. So we missed the opportunity diagnosing the patients at the right time to prevent this dismal prognosis or this dismal outcome. And there's, of course, a concern that by the pandemic, where everyone is concentrating in managing the pandemic, that we may even miss more appropriate care for these patients. So it's very important, and this is what we are doing in our centers, that we stay in contact with our patients, that we use whatever we can, just by phone or using telemedicine or more modern applications, to stay in contact, to hear what's going, to work together with the family doctors, to build a network around the patient, that he doesn't get lost in this pandemic. And of course, for those with more complex diseases or with liver cirrhosis, where you need the HCC, so the cancer screening or surveillance, this must be maintained, as well as all the treatment that is needed for decompensated disease. Also the transplant programs, you mentioned it. This is really very important, that you organize your center in a way that patients can safely come to the hospital, that there's no transmission of the virus in the hospital, and then that you can do what needs to be done in order to treat the liver disease appropriately.
It's been interesting as, unfortunately, I have needed care throughout the pandemic, whether those are infusions or an outpatient setting, but seeing the COVID procedures evolve to be able to create those safe spaces for non-COVID patients. And so, now, the e-COVID check-ins, the day before, and I see the different spacing protocols in either rooms or infusion chairs, and the extra, the cleaning and sanitation protocols or processes for patients to wear masks and wash hands and be observed doing that. And so, I have felt very, safe in accessing care. I also have taken advantage of many telehealth visits and have a few this week, and also it has been amazing that there has been more attention on some home services as well. I know in both the clinical trial experience and in some of the care experiences, there's new attention on many of the home-based care services that many patients have been advocating for quite a long time. So I think a renewed flexibility on reviewing what's the appropriate care setting for different types of patients will benefit care moving forward.
Yeah, and it's also important, that the patients are not really afraid of visiting the centers if we feel it's important, because this is also what we realized, that really the patients are not willing to come anymore. Well, this is okay, of course, but then at least make a concept. What else can we do in order to take the blood on a different, to see that everything is okay? Because this is a problem with liver disease. It doesn't hurt, You can't really, without testing, you can't not really see whether something is going wrong. Yeah, whether you have a rejection of your transplanted liver or whether there's a flare of an autoimmune liver disease. This can be only seen by a lab test.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I share my experiences of accessing care, to let other patients know that it is possible and it is safe. If you ask the right questions about how that care setting is set up. And I want to give so much credit to those clinicians and health systems that have made these investments of time and tireless energy to rearrange to such a great extent to be able to accommodate and still maintain screening and treatment for patients. As someone who was a fast progressor for my own disease, from diagnosis to transplant, while I recognize some people may take a decade or two to go from one stage to the next in the disease, having went from a diagnosis to almost death and a transplant in 2 years. And so and since we don't know necessarily who is who, which is who is the fast progressor, I think it's really important to maintain that schedule and not let months go, not let a whole year go, and just think that, oh well, we'll catch up eventually, because it may be too late.
Yeah, and I think in this, I won't like to say crisis, but during this pandemic, it's also important that the community speaks with one voice.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think all the major societies and also EASL provided guidance, not only to the physicians, how to manage your patient with liver disease. And I think nearly all medical societies provided this guidance, what to do. And we also translated it for the lays as a lay version, so for the patients, that they can really read and understand what we are thinking, what we are considering, how we can manage this situation. And I think in most hospitals now they are doing the COVID tests for all the inpatients. So this, in addition, increases safety and prevents transmission in hospital.
Absolutely. So that was a lot of innovation that was pulled together to combat this. So what does 2021 hold? What excites you about the potential for this new year, having gone through what we've gone through and learned what we've learned?
Well, personally, from an EASL perspective, we are going digital again, but we would like to do it even better. Of course, we would like to work with you, the patient organization, and find an even better way in incorporating. But from a medical point of view, I think there are really many, many interesting things to come and achievements. And I think we really have the proof now from recent publications that we can change the fate of patients with chronic liver diseases. As an example, with the very effective treatment of hepatitis C. We have now data that patients with hepatitis C really disappeared from the transplant waiting list. And it was a main indication for transplantation a couple of years ago. So in such a rapid period or such a short period, it changed completely the picture. And now non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, also alcoholic-associated fatty liver disease, is leading, and also cancer. And this is something we really have to take care about. And we have more medications to come. We have the first licensed treatment for hepatitis delta. And hepatitis delta is also a viral infection like hepatitis C of the liver, but much more aggressive. Quite often you can suffer from or develop liver cirrhosis within 10 years or so. And now for the first time we have a treatment. You have to do it subcutaneously. So it's an injection. You have to do it daily, but the effect is really quite amazing. So now we have really something to offer to these patients, and this is very good news. There's a lot going on with hepatitis B also to induce cure, and we have new treatments for liver cancer. And this is also something, and I think just with liver cancer, we are in the beginning really of new treatments, more individualized protocols according also to the type of cancer, what is well established in many other cancers, but not so far in liver cancer. But I think this is really the start of a new way of treatment.
One of the communities I was most excited to have more time in 2020 to be connected to and to spend more time with my fellow CEOs of cancer organizations, because you're right, liver cancer had not been seen as really part of the cancer community for so long. And so, at the CEO level, at the staff level, at the policy level, it has been so exciting and energizing for me to be a greater part of the oncology community, so that we can put those best practices in place that have benefited patients in other types of cancers, and apply them to liver cancer. And because, unfortunately, the fact is so many different types of liver disease ultimately end in liver cancer, it has allowed us a sort of a unifying platform of concepts all to prevent liver cancer, or whether it stems from hepatitis B or C. or NASH, or a rare liver disease. We can all speak with one voice that we would like to prevent liver cancer. And so that is one of the areas that I'm certainly, very excited in, and has a lot of momentum and traction in bringing the community together to address and to make sure that patients know that there is this array of treatments. Much like we're seeing in the vaccination efforts, that last mile, from innovation to arm is important. We think that we can play, as patient organizations, an important role in sort of pulling through that innovation in research to the patient, working on dissemination of information, working with health systems to reach out and have events that connect them to people who may not already be within the health system, and make sure that we reap the full benefits of what the researchers have worked so hard on to actually get to patients. And so whether it's conversations with payers to reimburse, or health systems to organize care in a particular way. The Global Liver Institute has always been organized and focused in such a way that sort of downstream, often underappreciated, under-resourced area from an advocacy perspective. And, after you have this great research, after you have this innovation, once you have it approved, then how do you make sure it doesn't take years and years for people to adopt it and get the benefit of it, and particularly to make sure that different communities don't fall through the cracks, and so that it benefits every patient appropriately who could benefit from the treatment. So it's exciting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's really proven that we can prevent cancer by a vaccine. And the first vaccine to prevent cancer was a hepatitis B vaccine.
Right.
And globally seen, B is a main driver of the cancer development throughout the world.
Absolutely. That was actually my introduction professionally to liver disease, working with Chinese physicians and Chinese American physicians on hepatitis B outreach, and so working with Dr. Jake Liang at the liver branch here, and others. And so to see the progress it's made, work that the Hepatitis B Foundation and the blocks have done in that from the advocacy perspective in partnership, is a wonderful model. May we have as much success and momentum in the other types of liver disease. So maybe that's my #2021 goal, to use the best of advocacy, learn from it, and hopefully emulate it.
Absolutely, yes.
But Dr. Berg, I thank you so much for this conversation today. Hopefully we'll be able to have more. And I always enjoy speaking with you. And now there are thousands of people who know why listen today. So do you have a last thought or word before we conclude the day? I'll give you the last one.
Well, it was really a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks again to Susie Glee, to your whole organization for inviting me. I think, what is really important also when medical societies are working with patient organizations, that we really listen to each other. And as you mentioned, that the knowledge we have in science will be translated in an appropriate way, and you can really help us, and we would love to work in this direction. And the last point, because we are also occupied by all the pandemic, is I think nobody would claim that this pandemic is really something good. No, definitely not. But I think in a way it helped us to explore some new ways. And I think we also learned it with Edel and the patient organization, that we started a different way of communication. And I think this is something we can continue on. But my deep wish for the future is that we will soon have the chance again to meet also physically, and that one have the chance to decide what to do, whether you would like to watch on a digital platform or whether we can meet again physically, to get inspired by new ideas.
I agree. I think, our 2021 theme has been unbound and yet connected. So we look forward to be unbound, but still make the choice to connect with each other in all the ways that we have learned. And so I look forward to connecting with our viewers next week on the next episode of GLI Live. You can find this episode and others on our website, on YouTube, at globalliver.org, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And I thank you for your time and look forward to all the fascinating conversations that 2021 will bring. Until next time, thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.